Disclaimer: this program contains graphic descriptions of real crimes. Viewer discretion is advised. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. The stalker who became the husband. If you've ever begged the universe not to let you die alone, listen carefully, because sometimes the thing that answers you isn't love. On Mara's wedding day, while the organ swelled and her mother dabbed at tears, her phone buzzed inside the bouquet. "You finally chose me," the message said. Her hands shook. She looked up at the man waiting at the altar. The man who learned her coffee order when she didn't know his last name, who showed up before she knew she needed anyone another buzz. "Don't be scared. I've been here all along. This is how loneliness seduces you, how rescue can dress itself as romance, until you realize the footsteps you're following were circling your life the whole time." When Mara's last relationship collapsed, it didn't explode, it just went quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerator breathe and the neighbor upstairs pace out his insomnia like a metronome. That's when the first footprint appeared, so small she nearly thanked it. A wind-toppled stack of free community papers reappeared on her stoop, squared and neat. No note, just tidy, like someone smoothing the world where it wrinkled around her. At the cafe, a paper cup slid onto her table without a face attached to it. 2 raw sugars, 1 light tap of cocoa on the lid, her exact ritual. A friend paid ahead, the barista said, shrugging. Mara smiled because being seen, even inaccurately, felt better than being invisible. A lavender sachet showed up in her mailbox, the card, "New Tenant Welcome." Except she wasn't new and nobody signed it. She tucked it into a drawer. Later, taking out the trash, she saw an identical sachet in the building bin, bow-tied precisely the same way. 2 twins, 2 hands, 1 habit. She told herself, it's the cleaner, it's the sweet lady from 3B, it's nothing. We narrate fear into something practical. It's how we keep walking down hallways at night. But it wasn't nothing when her bathroom mirror, fogged with a reminder she'd scrawled before her shower, "Buy light bulbs," was wiped clean by the time the glass cleared again. Same steam, same room, different decision. Finger, length smudges at the edges where a cloth had swiped too earnestly. You don't call the police for a tidy mirror. You tell yourself you forgot, and then you double. Check the lock you've checked your whole life with a twist that suddenly feels like a question. On Wednesday, the bank called. Security alert. We declined access. The caller gave your mother's maiden name, but the wrong one. Her mother had 3 last names in family stories. Only one was legal. "Be careful," the woman said. The line clicked. The apartment felt too bright. That night, Mara propped a chair beneath the door handle, not because it works, but because it lets your heartbeat outsource some of the work. She slept in pieces, waking to check the same corners she'd already checked. Morning brought sunlight and a man waiting outside the bookstore, holding a new release she'd once mentioned to a cashier who wasn't listening. He offered the book like an apology for being early to a life he'd already memorized. "Adrian," he said, giving the name and the gift together. His smile wasn't wide, it was relieved. "You said you loved this author." Mara blinked. "Did I?" She took the book, because refusing kindness in public feels like slapping a hand that hasn't done anything wrong. Yet, city people keep their eyes down. He said lightly, "I notice things." It should have stung. Instead, it warmed. When you've been alone long enough, being noticed feels like being rescued, right up until you realize what's doing the noticing has been close enough to fog your glass. That evening, she found a second lavender sachet, this time in the cookie jar she never used, tied in the same careful bow. She texted her friend Sienna, "Either my building is the kindest place on earth, or someone's practicing being inside my life." Sienna replied with a joke. Mara laughed, then she crossed the room and checked the lock again, listening for an answer she couldn't name, and for footsteps she still pretended she didn't hear. The gestures kept arriving like weather. A cappuccino waiting on a day she overslept, a rideshare idling at the curb just as she snapped her umbrella open, a maintenance request submitted for the stairwell bulb she'd been meaning to report. No signatures, just timing, a choreography that always placed the world 2 seconds closer to her needs. On a slow Sunday, she scrolled photos from a gallery opening and paused at her own reflection. Caught in a window, the city doubled and ghosted behind her. Slightly out of focus, over her left shoulder, stood a man angled like he already belonged in the frame. The timestamp was 8 months old. The same night she walked the city after Theo left and decided to try being alone as if it were a skill. 8 months before she met Adrian. Coincidence, she told herself. Cities overlap, lives rhyme. She slid her phone face down and watched the ceiling as if it might confess. In the laundry room, she reached for quarters and found a post-it on the machine. Takes dollar bills now. Ate my coins yesterday. The handwriting was neat, careful, the same precision as the bows. She folded the note and slipped it into her pocket like a warning disguised as help. At work, she caught herself glancing at glass. Storefronts, bus shelters, the black shine of a turn. Doff monitor, not for danger exactly, for pattern, for that angle again, that posture of belonging. One evening, her smoke alarm shrieked when the oven charred a pizza. Before she could swat the battery, there was a knock. 3 measured taps, familiar, like a sound she recognized from a place she couldn't name. I thought I smelled something downstairs, Adrian said, hair still damp, shoes unlaced as if he'd stepped out of a shower and forgotten to finish getting dressed. He held up a small toolkit. New batteries, I keep a few. Care can arrive suspiciously fast. Sometimes you want it anyway. He fixed the alarm and left the toolkit on the counter. She watched him go, a question perched on her tongue with no safe way to ask it. Later, she wrote on the mirror again, "Do not ignore." The words held while the steam drew halos around them. She left the bathroom door open, just a sliver, as if that could trap whatever moved through when she wasn't looking, at 2:11 a.m. Her phone lit the dark, unknown number, a single line, "Sleep, I'm here." She sat up, heart a bass drum. She typed, "Who is this?" The typing bubble appeared, vanished, reappeared, vanished. No reply. Mara waited until morning and took the long way to the cafe, choosing sidewalks with more dogs, more strollers, more witnesses. She ordered her drink with deliberate slowness, repeating the details even though the barista, by now, could make it without asking. At the end of the bar, Adrian lifted his cup. "Your order," he said, smiling. 2 raw sugars, 1 dusting of cocoa. She laughed because what else do you do? "Should I be creeped out, you remember?" He shook his head. "I remember the people I want to take care of." The words landed softly and stuck like burrs. That afternoon, Mara's building super texted, "Someone asked for your spare. I said no. You losing keys?" Her thumbs hesitated over the screen. She typed, "No, thanks." Then she deleted the bubble and called Sienna instead. "Tell me to stop being dramatic," Mara said. "Stop being dramatic." Sienna said automatically, "Also buy a better lock. I'll Venmo you half if it makes you actually do it." By dusk, a new deadbolt shone on the door. She turned it twice, savoring the solid click, a sound like a verdict. She slept, if you could call it sleep, on the couch with the TV scrolling menus, a wave, sound video looping into the small hours. At sunrise, a soft thud on the mat. Mara opened the door to a small brown parcel, a set of reinforced window latches, the exact model she'd bookmarked but never purchased. No sender, just a note inside, for peace. She stood in the doorway with morning on her face and the package warm from whoever had carried it up the stairs. "Thank you," she said, to the hall, to the air, to the absence that felt like a presence doing its best impression of love. He waited outside the bookstore 2 more times that week, never closer than a polite distance, like he was learning her rhythm the way you learn the timing of a crosswalk. The 3rd time, he spoke first. "I know I came on strong with the book," he said, hands visible, smile small. "I'm Adrian." "Mara," she offered, because giving a first name costs less than suspicion. They walked the long block together. It felt harmless, no touching, no pressure, just a man who matched her stride without stepping on her shadow. He asked what she was reading, and when she told him, he didn't force a shared opinion. He listened, asked a better question, waited for the answer after it stopped being cute. It unnerved her how easy it was to keep talking. It soothed her, too. On their first coffee, he paid with cash and said, "No obligation." When the barista called out her order without looking, Adrian laughed softly. "Fame, routine," she corrected. "Same thing," he said. "One is just the quieter version." She learned the small things quickly: clipped nails, shirts with the top button done even when casual, the way he folded napkins into exact halves and set his phone face down as if conversation deserved a clear table. He learned the small things faster: that she left her tea bag in too long, that she hated the dry slap of paper towels in public bathrooms, that she would always choose the seat with a view of the door. "You always sit facing the exit," he noticed. "You don't." "I do," he said, and left it there as if the reason would be rude in daylight. When he asked for her number, he did it like he was offering a choice, not a test. She gave it, a new SIM she'd bought after the night of the sleep. "I'm here." Text. He typed it in carefully. No request for her last name, no social media fish. He just said, "I'll use it well," like a promise he understood might already be broken. They didn't touch much. He didn't push. The absence of pressure felt like manners. It also felt like a net you couldn't see until you were caught. Days slid into a pattern: morning texts that never woke her, mid-day messages that never interrupted meetings, links to articles about small city museums and free concerts she happened to love. "Thought you might," he'd write. "Never you should." She found herself saying yes more than no because the yesies were well-timed, like someone had mapped her fatigue and joy on graph paper and circled the hour that most needed a kindness. One night, she burned dinner and opened the window, waving a dish towel in a ritual dance that accomplished nothing. A knock, 3 careful taps. She recognized the cadence before she recognized him. "I was walking by," he said, smelled. Ambition. He held up takeout from the Thai place she used to go with Theo. "I gambled on medium spice." "Bold," she said, stepping aside. He set the bag down, then paused an inch from the counter, waiting for permission to touch what wasn't his. She nodded. He plated the food with an attention that embarrassed her. How he centered portions, wiped a stray drip, folded the paper handles into tidy squares before tossing them. "You're good at this," she said. "Practice," he answered. "There's always a way to make a day less sharp." She should have asked, practice with whom. Instead, she asked whether he wanted still or sparkling. He said still, please, like water had ever been otherwise. After, he walked her to the door and looked at the new deadbolt with what might have been admiration. "Solid," he said. "Can I recommend a better strike plate? The screws on those builder grade ones are a joke. No locks. I know the parts of a house that fail first," he said. And how to keep them from failing. The next weekend, they browsed a flea market. He drifted 2 steps behind or 2 ahead, never alongside, which made conversation a call and response across a moving aisle. When a vendor miscounted her change, Adrian waited for Mara to notice. When she didn't, he said nothing. At the end of the row, he handed her a folded bill. "You dropped this," he said. She checked her purse. She hadn't. "You saw." "I noticed things," he repeated, and she felt both grateful and invaded by the same 4 words. They had their first not quite argument over a spare key. He didn't ask for one. He asked about one. "Your super hides them in the hallway sprinkler boxes," he said, casual as weather. "People talk." "Do they?" she said, holding his eyes. He held them back, neither apologizing nor advancing. "Change your hiding spot," he suggested. "Or don't hide one at all," noted, she said, which in her life meant no. At his apartment, the neatness was almost kind. 2 pairs of slippers sat by the door, one in his size, one in hers, brand, new tags tucked under the heel. He looked at the slippers, then at her, waiting for the question he pretended he hadn't prepared to answer. "How'd you get my size right?" she asked anyway. He grinned. "Guess. Good guess," she said, sliding her feet in because refusing comfort is harder than refusing gifts. The kitchen was spare and well set up. He cooked with clean wrists, running water between tasks, knife angles exact. He listed her allergy before she did. "No walnuts," he said, tapping the cutting board. "No shared boards." He opened a brand, new jar of something with the label still on. "No chance of cross contact. Do you cook like this for everyone?" "I don't cook like this for anyone," he said, then softened it with a shrug. "I like you." After dinner, he asked if he could see her place, finally, not for a nightcap, he said, but to carry her packages up the stairs. She said no, politely. He nodded. "No sulk, no sigh. Another time," he said, and meant it like a plan, not a hope. The next morning, she found the staircase light fixed and a note from the super. "Thanks to your guy for flagging it." Her guy. She read the words twice. The first boundary came a day later like lightning. Bright, decisive. She woke to a tiny change. Her phone's lock sound was different. Not wrong, exactly. Just different. A setting had been toggled. She didn't remember toggling it. She told herself updates do that sometimes. She told herself a lot of harmless lies and held them tight. At lunch, Adrian appeared with an umbrella, the sky just starting to grumble. He raised it over both their heads without closing the distance. The rain came sideways and still he didn't pull her in. "You hate being scooped," he said. "You like to walk your own pace." "You say that like you've timed it," she said. He smiled. "I have," he said, and it landed as a joke because she let it. They reached the corner and the light stayed red, and in that small pause a truth pressed against her. "Adrian," she said, keeping her voice even, "were you at that gallery opening 8 months ago? The one in the old post office?" "Probably," he said. "Were you behind me in a window reflection?" He didn't blink. "Probably," he said again, softer this time, as if the word was a string instrument he could tune by touch. "This city is a loop. We all haunt each other's photos." She wanted to laugh. She wanted to run. She did neither. The light turned green. They crossed. That night, she dreamed of mirrors that fogged over names she hadn't written. She woke with the taste of metal in her mouth and found a small cardboard box outside her door, a reinforced strike plate. No note. The screws were long enough to bite the studs. She stood holding the hardware like a verdict and understood that love, when it finally arrived, might already have built its own key. When he texted, "Want me to install it?" She stared at the screen until the typing bubble pulsed and went away, pulsed and went away. She typed back, "No thank you." He replied instantly, "Proud of you." She put the plate in a drawer and made coffee she didn't drink. The apartment was so quiet she could hear the neighbor upstairs not pacing. She went to the mirror and traced a small heart in the corner of the glass with her fingertip, then watched it fade. By evening, she said yes to dinner. Not because she decided he was safe, but because she didn't want fear to make all her decisions. They ate in a place with a big window and crowded tables. He sat where she could see the door. He did not comment that she noticed. He told a story about the first apartment he'd rented, a studio with a front door that stuck. "I used to shoulder it open," he said. "Every night I thought if someone needed help on the other side, they'd die before I got in." "Maybe you should have lived somewhere else," she said. "Maybe," he agreed, and didn't add that he'd solved the door instead of moving. She heard the unsaid thing anyway. Outside, he walked her home and stopped one step from the stoop. He looked at the deadbolt as if it were a living thing they both loved. "You're okay?" he asked. "I'm learning," she said. "Me too," he answered, and it sounded almost true. Later, in the soft blue between midnight and morning, her phone buzzed once. Unknown number again. One line, "He won't hurt you," she typed. "Who is this?" No reply. She sat in the dark and realized the message did not scare her as much as the certainty did, that someone believed they knew the limits of a man better than the man did. That someone thought the fence was enough because they'd built it. She turned her phone face down and lay on her side of the bed, awake, listening for a key that might never turn and the softer danger of a kindness that always would. On Saturday, she said yes to seeing his place, because fear shouldn't be the only editor of a life. He buzzed her in before the second chime finished. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and new paint. His door opened on a room arranged like a proof, every object supporting the next. 2 pairs of slippers waited by the threshold, one in his size, one in hers, brand, new with the tags tucked under the heel. "How'd you guess?" she asked, sliding a toe into the smaller pair before she could stop herself. He smiled, not a guess. The apartment was neat without looking staged, white towels with stitched borders, a tea kettle polished to its own reflection, plants that were watered the day they needed water, not the day after. On the kitchen counter, a cutting board sat untouched beside sealed ingredients, labels facing forward like a promise of order. He opened a drawer to show her a tray of clean utensils, then closed it like he hadn't meant to show her anything at all. He cooked with sleeves rolled once. No more ists clean, knife angles exact. No walnuts, he said before she could. New jar, new board. He rinsed the blade between tasks. He wiped the counter as if crumbs were a kind of rudeness. "You do this for everyone?" she asked, unsure whether she wanted yes or no. "I do this for risk," he said lightly, "and for you." He plated dinner as if the plates mattered. He asked about her day and listened as if it mattered more than the answer. When she stumbled on a dumb office story, he didn't rescue it. He let the silence sit until it turned useful. After, he stood an inch from the dishwasher, waiting for permission to load it. She nodded, and he moved like he'd memorized the puzzle before opening the box. On the coffee table, there was a stack of programs from galleries and readings, the kind of cultural detritus you keep for a week and toss. She skimmed the dates, a few recent, a few older. In the middle, her eye snagged on a small logo from the old post office exhibition. The one with her ghosted reflection in the window. 8 months ago, you went to this. She tried to sound casual and missed. Probably, he said, I love that space. She wanted to say I saw you in my mirror, and also I saw an outline I turned into you. She did neither. They took their tea to the couch. He didn't crowd. He didn't touch her knee, her shoulder, her hair. He kept his hands on his own cup and his eyes on hers. The restraint felt like respect until she caught the other feeling shadowing it, choreography. You ever think about moving? She asked, still watching him watch her. Why would I? He smiled. I picked this place. You said your first door stuck. He nodded. I learned to fix the hinge, and if the hinges aren't the problem, he sipped his tea. Then I learned something else. When he walked her home, he stopped one step shy of the stoop, the way he always did, as if there were an invisible line he'd painted and sworn to obey. He looked at the new deadbolt like other men look at sunsets. Still turning clean. Yes, I'm happy, he said simply. Happy is rare. Is it? For most people, he replied as though she knew the percentage. She woke at 1, 43 to the building's pipes banging like someone shaking a metal skeleton. She padded to the kitchen for water, and in the half light she saw it, a small cardboard box tucked behind her fruit bowl, reinforced window locks, the exact model she'd bookmarked. Again, she didn't scream. She sat on the floor with the box in her lap until the cold worked its way through the cotton of her pajamas. When her breath calmed, she texted Adrian, "Thank you for dinner." She waited. "Sleep well." He replied 2 minutes later, "You too." She typed, "Did you stop by?" Then she deleted it. She poured the water down the sink just to hear it go. In the morning, she installed the locks herself. She watched a video twice, then measured twice, then drilled once. The screws bit into wood like a decision. She felt oddly proud and a little sick, like finishing a race you didn't sign up for. Her phone chimed, a calendar invite for neighborhood safety workshop. No sender name. The location, the community room 2 buildings over. The time matched her lunch hour perfectly. She stared at the invite until the accept/decline buttons looked like a choice between 2 wrong doors. She tapped maybe, then went anyway, because if someone wanted her to go, she wanted to know why. A man in a polo talked about door viewers and strike plates and the importance of long screws and good neighbors. People asked questions with the impatience of those who want the world to behave. Mara took notes even when she knew the answers. She felt eyes occasionally and refused to look back. Leaving, she almost collided with Adrian. He held up a pamphlet as if to prove he'd been listening to the same sermon. "Thought I might see you. Did you invite me? I send those to everyone I care about," he said. "When they're scheduled, I have alerts." "How many everyone's is that?" he considered. "Fewer than you think," he said. "More than I can admit." "Honest," she said, and hated that she meant it. That evening, Sienna came by with wine and loud opinions and sat on the floor while Mara paced. "Keys," Sienna said. "You need to change everything. Locks, passwords, door habits, the way you breathe near windows." "I changed the lock," Mara said, "and the plate, then change the rest." "And what if the problem isn't the hardware?" Mara asked, voice small. Sienna set the glass down. "Then we change the software," she said. "Delete whatever makes you say yes when your stomach is saying wait." The words made the room tilt. Mara put both hands on the back of a chair until it steadied. 2 days later, the building super caught her in the hall. "Your friend fixed the vestibule hinge," he announced, pleased, said the door was catching, asked for permission, did it right there, good man, we need more like him. Mara forced a smile that felt like a mask slipping. In her apartment, she pressed her forehead to the cool of the window and watched the stoop. 3 teenagers argued about nothing. A courier balanced 6 pizzas like a dare. Ordinary life went on at a volume she suddenly missed. Her phone buzzed. "Adrian, dinner, no pressure. Your place feels safer than mine tonight, honestly. Construction next door," she typed. "My place is fine." Then another time. Then she erased both and wrote, "Okay." Early, he arrived with fresh basil and a brand new jar of marinara. In the kitchen, he hovered like a man trying to be helpful without touching anything. "You installed those locks well," he said, admiring without condescension. "Clean lines, thanks." At the stove, the sauce burped and dotted her wrist. He reached for a towel, then stopped himself. "May I?" "Yes," she said, and he dabbed the spot with the gentleness of someone tending an altar. They ate. They talked about small things on purpose. The basil made the room smell like a better story than this one. After, he stepped to the hallway mirror and tilted his head at the word she'd traced a week ago, "do not ignore," which had dried into faint, stubborn strokes at the corner. He didn't touch it. He only looked, then looked at her, a question he didn't voice. "Mara," he said finally, "I bought you something." He reached into his bag and placed a box on the table, sleek, white, humming with promise. "A smart doorbell for you," he added, hands empty. "You can see whoever's there. It's yours. You control it." She held the box like it might hum louder. "That's thoughtful and selfish," he said before she could supply the criticism. "It'll make me feel better when I know you're home, but only if you want it, only if you install it." She put the box beside the basil. "I'll think about it." He nodded. Thinking is good. He didn't stay late. At the door, he looked down at the deadbolt, not like a lover, more like a student who respects the test. "Text me when you're in bed," he said, then caught himself. "If you want or don't, I'll survive not knowing." She closed the door and leaned against it, counting her breaths to 5, then 5 again. In the quiet, she heard her phone ping from the coffee table. Unknown number. He keeps his promises. She typed, "Who are you?" The bubble appeared, vanished. Minutes later, Adrian texted, "Thank you for dinner. You were safe. That matters to me." She stared at both messages, the one with a name, the one without, and realized the thing that rattled her most was not the gifts or the locks or even the programs from 8 months ago. It was the sensation that 2 versions of the same voice were speaking from opposite sides of the same fence, and both insisted they were on her side. She set the phone face down. The basil sweetened the air. Somewhere a hinge worked without complaint. She turned the deadbolt once, then again, loving the sound and hating that she loved it. She told herself the messages would stop if she acted like they didn't exist. Ignoring a drumbeat doesn't silence it, it only pushes it behind the wall. So she worked, she answered emails, she watered the basil that wasn't supposed to live this long. And when Adrian texted a photo of a neighborhood cat sunning itself on a stoop, she sent back a heart and pretended the world could be that simple. It held for 2 days. On the third, between meetings, she scrolled a neighborhood blog, photo galleries, street fairs, a book swap, the post office exhibition from last winter. She tapped into that one and there it was, her reflection in a window, scarf red as an emergency. Over her left shoulder, softened by distance, a man angled toward her like he already belonged in the frame. She zoomed until the pixels broke. His shape was generic enough to be anyone's, but the posture, the patience, felt specific. She put the phone face down and stared at the office wall clock, moving like a polite intruder through the afternoon. 5 o'clock arrived in small, obedient increments. She packed her bag. She told herself, coincidence is still a kind of truth. At home, a small parcel waited on the mat, a pack of adhesive privacy dots for laptop cameras, no return address, a note for peace. She held them in her palm and imagined every unseen eye they were meant to blind. She set the packet on the table beside the smart doorbell box, which hummed its promise without making a sound. Adrian called. "Walk," he asked. "Lots of witnesses. You'll like it." "Who said I need witnesses?" "I did," he said, as if that were the same as her saying it. They met on the avenue. He kept a half step off her shoulder, as if he'd measured the distance where presence becomes pressure and chosen a side. "I saw a photo from the post office show," she said, not looking at him. "I think you were in it." "Probably," he answered. "I go to everything there. 8 months before we met." He tilted his head like she'd asked him to identify a bird by its call. "I'm a creature of habit. So are you." They paused at a crosswalk. The light held red longer than it needed to, time stretching like warm taffy across the street. "Did you know me then?" she asked. "I knew of you," he said carefully. "You were the woman who read the wall labels all the way to the last comma." "That's not knowing me." It was a start. She could have walked away then, made the red light her exit, let the city swallow her. Instead, she stepped off the curb when it flipped green, and he matched her pace, a shadow generous enough not to overlap. Back at her place, he didn't ask to come up. He looked at the doorbell box in her arms. "You want help?" he asked, and the way he asked, hands down, voice low, made it almost safe to say yes. "Fine," she said. "But I choose the settings. You control everything," he said. "That's the point." They installed it together in the hour before dusk, when the street turned the color of old nickel. He held the screws without telling her where to put them. She balanced on the step and tightened each one until the metal sang. Inside, they synced the app to her phone. A chime trilled, too cheerful for the subject. "Notifications off by default," he said. "Mine are always off by default," she replied, and turned them off even harder. He lingered at the threshold. "Spare key?" he asked, light as a paper airplane tossed across a room. "For emergencies?" "No," she said. "Not yet." He nodded, didn't flinch. "Ask me for mine, then." "I don't want yours either." He smiled, not hurt, not smug. "Just present." "Okay." He left at the edge of dark. She watched his back recede, a man drawing his own boundary with feet instead of chalk. An hour later, the doorbell chimed. She flinched, then laughed at herself and tapped the live view. An empty hallway, just air and the distant tail of someone's conversation on the stairs. She rewound 10 seconds and saw a blur of motion, too fast to identify, too slow to be a ghost. She turned the sensitivity down 1 notch. The house exhaled. She made tea. She tried to read. The words didn't stick. She clicked open her photo roll again and brought up the post office image, zooming on the man-shaped patience in the glass behind her. Then she went searching, not for him but for context. She found another candid from the same night on a stranger's public feed, captured from a different angle. There, her red scarf. There, the angled shape again, farther back. In this one, his face caught a smear of light. It made him someone and no one at once. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, you're doing well. She typed, who is this? And before she could hit send, a second message arrived. Your house is safer today than it was yesterday. She didn't reply. She took a screenshot and dragged it into a hidden album labeled taxes because some fears deserve boring disguises. She slept with the doorbell app open beside her bed. At 2:37 it chimed, just once, small as a hiccup. Live view, the hallway, empty again. She rewound and caught only the ripple of air, as if someone had moved past just out of frame, leaving behind the weather of their absence. In the morning, a white envelope waited on the mat like a polite threat. Inside, a printed floor plan of her apartment, the kind a management office tucks into lease packets, her unit number circled in blue pen. A second envelope, smaller, fell out when she shook the first. Nothing inside but a key-shaped outline embossed on thick cardstock, no key. On the back, neat handwriting, you don't need this, but locks have two meanings. She carried the paper to the table and sat like it was a witness she had to question gently, or it would shut down. She called the management office. No, the woman said, patient, we don't hand those out, must have been from your file. A pause. Do you want to come look at your file? Yes, she said, the word costing more than a bus fare today. Adrian texted, coffee after your meeting. She stared at the screen. She typed busy, then she added tomorrow, tomorrow. He echoed, always. At the office, the manager pulled a manila folder, corners softened by years. Inside, application, references, pet waiver, the floor plan she just held at home. Everything looks in order, the manager said. We keep copies, we don't loan them. Has anyone else seen this file? Supervisors, the woman said. Contractor once, maybe. Lock replacement last winter. She squinted. Nice new strike plate, by the way. Mara left with a tight smile and a list of names she pretended were just names and not a map of all the ways a life leaks. On the sidewalk, she called Sienna. Tell me to stop inventing monsters, she said. Stop inventing monsters, Sienna said, then lowered her voice. And change every password you own. 2-factor, new email, nuclear option. Nuclear, Mara repeated and felt, for the first time, the shape of anger under the fear. Thin, hot, useful. Back home, she opened her laptop and started the ritual, new passphrases, authenticator app, security keys in their tiny sleeves. She worked until her head rang with codes and small triumphs. At the end, she turned to the mirror and wrote with a dry, erase marker she kept for lists. I am not a habit. The doorbell chimed. She tapped live view and saw a delivery driver in neon smirk at his reflection as he set down a box. She opened the door after he left. Inside the box, a home security starter kits, answers for Windows, a hub, a yard sign looking brave, no note. The packing slip listed no buyer. The return address was the warehouse itself, which meant nothing. She laughed then, a short, ugly sound. What do you think I am? She asked the empty room, a project. Her phone vibrated. This time it was Adrian. Don't be mad. The text said, I'll return it if you don't want it. She stared hard, willing her pulse to tell the truth. Adrian, not unknown, the same message, different mask. She typed, did you send it? He replied, I recommended it to someone who owes me a favor. I didn't give them your address. He added, I thought maybe they could gift it. I won't do that again. She put the box on the floor and sat beside it. Thank you, she wrote, 2 words full of conditional tenses. Then, no more favors. If I want something, I'll ask. Understood, he sent. She could almost hear him sitting wherever he was, hands open, trying to learn stillness like a second language. That evening, she made a new boundary without announcing it. She left the doorbell notifications on. Every ping would be a trial she didn't want, but she was done borrowing anyone else's calm. She cooked something simple and oversalted it and ate every bite like it was a proof of life. At 9, the bell chimed again. She glanced down, a shape at the edge of frame, pausing, then retreating, a hat brim, a shoulder. The resolution gave her nothing kind. She rewound twice and froze the blur in the middle of a step. Whoever it was knew where her camera's edge lived. Whoever it was had learned to keep a toe on the right side of a line. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. I told him not to send the kit. He heard me. She typed, "I don't want any more of your messages. Do not text this number again." The bubble appeared, vanished, finally, understood. She watched the live view 10 minutes longer than she needed to, then turned the phone face down. In the mirror, her written line, "I am not a habit," looked like an order she'd given the whole building. She slept badly and still called the morning a victory. When Adrian texted at noon, "Dinner, public place, you pick," she wrote back, "Yes." She chose a crowded diner where the lighting forgave no one and the waiters called everyone Han. He arrived right on time and didn't sit until she nodded. He looked tired in a way that made him younger, the kind of tired you get from holding a pose too long. "No gifts," she said before the menus arrived. "No gifts," he echoed. "Only questions. Ask." He laced his fingers together on the table where she could see them. "Are you safe?" "I am safer than I was yesterday," she said, and watched the sentence go through him like a slow wave. "Then I'm less needed," he said, trying to smile. "You were never supposed to be needed," she said. "Wanted, maybe." He swallowed. "I'm trying to learn the difference." They ordered breakfast for dinner because eggs and pancakes made everything stupider in a way she needed. They ate. They left separate tips. Outside, he walked with her toward the train and stopped one step short of the turnstile. "Spare key?" he said softly, not asking, just tasting the words once before he promised not to say them again. "Not yet," he added for her, and she exhaled, surprised by the mercy of a man who could translate her silence. On the platform, she watched him disappear around a tiled curve, the basil. Sweet memory of his kitchen and the iron taste of the unknown message, both alive in her mouth. The train arrived, doors yawned. She stepped in with the smallest part of her hope still intact and the largest part of her attention finally awake. The night after the diner, she cooked too much pasta and left the extra in a glass container by the door like she could feed whatever prowled the threshold with carbohydrates and it might decide to leave her alone. She slept not well, but all the way to the alarm, which felt like cheating. At lunch, Adrian sent a photo of a street tree wrapped in knit yarn, a tiny scarf fluttering in a kind wind. "People trying," he wrote. "People trying," she echoed because she wanted to believe effort was enough. In the afternoon, she walked to the river and let the noise smooth her edges. The wind came hard from the west, pushing a plastic bag along the path like a small animal that didn't need saving. When her phone buzzed, she glanced down, bracing for the unknown. Adrian instead. "Dinner here. I'll cook. You leave whenever you want." She almost said no on principle. Then she said yes on practice. Fear would not be the only editor. His door opened before the second chime finished. The apartment greeted her with lemon and heat. 2 pairs of slippers waited. Same brand, same tucked tags, like a ritual that had been rehearsed into politeness. She slid into the smaller pair, making herself memorize the give of the foam, the way it remembered her. On the counter, ingredients were lined up like soldiers awaiting orders. He worked with quiet wrists, touching everything the way people touch when they think they have only one chance to get it right. "New jar, new board," he said, tapping the walnut. "Free label like a talisman," then smiling before she could accuse him of performance. I know, I'm trying not to narrate my goodness. That's a shame," she said. "I was enjoying the audio tour." They ate at his small table, elbows carefully inside boundaries you could see and the ones you couldn't. He asked questions that went 1 degree past small talk, safely personal, and when she answered, he let the quiet sit until it turned into something like trust. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. Under the table, her toes pressed against the slipper's edge, and she thought of how many edges he had filed down for her and how many he'd sharpened when she wasn't looking. After, he reached for dishes, then stopped. "May I?" She nodded. He loaded the dishwasher with that strange competence that embarrassed her. He knew where plates go in kitchens he didn't live in. "Tea?" he asked. "Mint, please." The word came out softer than she intended. "Back in a second," he said, disappearing down the hall to the bathroom, the kettle starting its gentle whistle like a breath before a confession. Alone in the hum, Mara stood. She didn't mean to snoop. She meant to exist more carefully. The plants glowed with the kind of health that means someone is not guessing. On the bookshelf, spines faced outward like teeth. She ran her finger along a row and paused on a slim notebook. Plain cover, elastic band. She didn't open it. She shouldn't open it. She opened it. Inside, neat blocks of handwriting, dates, and tiny weather icons, small notes that read like captions to a tape she didn't know she'd made. 26:42 a.m. Lights on at her place. 7:15 run, same route. 8:05 coffee, 2 sugars, cocoa dust. 8:23 bus missed, walked instead. Jacket, blue, smile, tired. Next page. 5 enders short. Changed her, returned bill, did not correct cashier. Pattern, avoids confrontation. Remedy, create spaces where she doesn't have to ask. Her name appeared only once, halfway down a page. Not Mara, M, like a variable in a math problem he already knew the answer to. The kettle whistled, soft, then harder. In the bathroom, the fan hummed without urgency. Mara shut the notebook and slid it back. She made herself line the elastic exactly as it had been. Her hands weren't trembling so much as awake. She took a breath and another and crossed to the far side of the living room, telling herself she was looking for air. A narrow door flush with the wall caught her eye. A utility closet disguised as a seam. The knob resisted like a mouth refusing a spoon. It opened a quarter, inch, then stopped, not locked, hooked. The fan cut off. His footsteps unhurried. She let the knob go like it had burned. He returned with 2 mugs, mint steam drawing green halos in the lamplight. 2 cubes, he asked, or none? None. She said, turning back to the table, because you don't interrogate a closet in front of a man you're not ready to accuse. He set a mug in front of her, his own across. They drank. The mint scalded her tongue and still tasted sweet. He told a story about a childhood piano teacher who slapped his wrists lightly when he hunched his shoulders. She said the body lies before the mouth does. He said, straighten first, then speak. What are you straightening now? She asked. He glanced at his hands, then opened them, the most honest answer he'd given. They talked an hour about things that would have mattered in a different story. She stood to leave before the night got edges. He walked her to the door and did not bend the house between them into a shape she hadn't agreed to. On the landing, she turned. The notebook, she said, before her courage could turn into a more convenient silence. Should I be worried? He didn't pretend not to know which notebook. He didn't ask how far she'd read. You should be informed, he said softly. Then you should decide. Decide what? If I get to keep learning the right way, why were you taking notes? He exhaled, a careful sound. Because I mislearned what care looks like. Writing it made it slower. Slower made it less wrong. Less wrong. She held the phrase like an object without an instruction manual. Delete it, she said. If you need to learn, learn by being where you're allowed, not by archiving me. I will, he said. I'll bring it to my therapist, then I'll burn it. Bring the burning part to me, she said, surprising herself. I want to see it. He nodded. Okay. He watched her go down the stairs. Only when she turned the corner did he close his door, the latch clicking like a clock. She didn't sleep. She watched the ceiling turn from gray to less gray and heard a delivery truck exhale at the curb and wondered how many of the careful kindnesses she'd accepted had been paid for with data she hadn't meant to give. In the morning, she showered, left the mirror fogged, and wrote nothing at all. Her building's basement was a collection of histories no one wanted in their apartments. Paint cans, a folding table with one broken hinge, a bicycle wheel that didn't claim a bike. She went there because the super had texted about a hot water check, and because the idea of being above ground made her feel too visible. The single fluorescent hummed like a fly in a jar. She passed the big breaker box and saw a half, hidden behind a metal shelf, a small cupboard hunched into the wall, newer wood on old brick. A steel latch held it shut. The screws looked recently turned. She fit her fingers under the lip as if she'd always had the key. Inside, hooks on the hooks, tags, not keys, tags, each tag with a date, a neighborhood, a unit number written in neat block letters, then a word. Old lock, new lock, no answer, no spare. Her breath thinned. She tugged one tag free, 2019, Roebling 3R, old lock. Another, 2021, Prospect 2F, no answer. Another, 2023, Maple 5A, new lock. At the back, one with her current street, week, hold date, a check mark beside strike plate installed. Her throat made a sound she didn't think was hers. Mara, she spun, tags snapping against the hooks like insects. The super stood in the doorway with a wrench and a face that had only ever done one thing, fix things when asked. "You lost," he said. "What's this?" she asked, holding up the tag. Her voice sounded like someone else doing an impression of calm. Contractor's notes. He said, puzzled. "Guy fixed a bunch of doors this year. Good work. Didn't charge much, either. Said the neighborhood was rough on hardware." Her mouth opened, closed. "Which guy?" He scratched his cheek with the wrench. "Quiet one, polite, short hair, slippers in his bag. I remember thinking that was odd. Why?" She set the tag back like it could bite. "No reason," she said, and hated herself for the lie because it sounded fluent on her tongue. Upstairs, the doorbell camera pinged a motion. She watched on her phone as a shoulder passed, then a forearm, then nothing. She rewound and paused on a sliver of sleeve where the stitching on the cuff was so precise she could see the thread. Her phone buzzed. "Adrian, tea later. I'll bring the notebook for you to watch me burn." She typed, "Come at 6. Then she deleted "come" and wrote 6. She added, "Bring everything." She didn't specify what everything was because if he didn't understand, it meant the problem was larger than both of them. At 5:59, he texted, "Downstairs." At 6, the doorbell showed him exactly where she expected him to be. One step off the threshold, hands visible, the practiced shape of a man who had learned to telegraph deference. She opened the door and stood where he stood once, the invisible line between them suddenly visible. He lifted the slim notebook, the elastic still exactly where she'd left it, then a paper bag full of other things, envelopes, folded programs, a small stack of tags that looked too familiar. "I thought we'd start with this," he said. "How many?" she asked, nodding at the tags. His eyes didn't move, enough to make me ashamed. "Say the number." He swallowed. "7 for you. Others for people from before you." He added, as if begging for context with a tin cup, "They were placeholders, promises I made myself about being better than I was. Better would have been not doing it," she said. "I am." He stopped. "Trying to be the kind of man who would have known that then." "Good," she said. "Bring the lighter." They met in public now on purpose. Windows, witnesses, bad coffee. He brought receipts from therapy like a student presenting homework, not because she asked, but because he understood that proof is a bridge when trust has washed out. "I talk," he said, tapping the paper with 2 fingers. "About control, about making fear look like care." The word control sat between them like a blade laid carefully on a table. She didn't soften. She didn't annihilate him either. She kept choosing the third option, conditions. Weeks turned into a shape that held no gifts, no unknown packages, no happened to be nearby. He never crossed the threshold unless she was there, unless she said the word "come." The doorbell, now undeniably hers, learned new hours, and the phantom shoulder stopped hovering at the edge of frame. Unknown went quiet. Silence returned, not the kind that hides footsteps, the kind that lets a clock be a clock again. On a gray afternoon, they walked by the river without speaking. The wind pressed at their coats like an old ant, testing the seams. He reached into his pocket and took out a small card, not a ring box, a list. "If you stay," he said, "these are the rules I follow, not mine, yours." He handed it over and put his hands behind his back as if to show they had nothing else in them. He'd written them in his careful block letters. "I don't come in unless invited. I don't fix what isn't broken. I don't know anything I didn't learn because you handed it to me. I tell you when I'm afraid, instead of trying to make the world behave." She read it twice. "You forgot one," she said. "If I say stop, you stop." He nodded, added it at the bottom, and then, without being asked, signed and dated it like a simple contract with no legal power and every moral one. "What if I can't keep these?" he asked. "Then we end it." She said, "I don't stay inside a maze someone else designed." He swallowed, "Then let me keep them. Try." She said, "Because love is not a permit. It's a trial period with no guaranteed renewal." There were ordinary weeks after that. Laundry, a movie that started too late. Minty forgot to water. He texted fewer questions because fewer paragraphs of her day belonged to him. She slept with her phone face down, not because she needed to, but because she didn't anymore. He asked her to marry him in a quiet room with a lamp that made the dust look like snow. No audience, no tricks. He didn't kneel. He stood at her distance and asked like he was setting a plate down gently. "Not to own," he said, "to practice, with rules." He didn't hold up a ring as proof. He held up his hands. "You can walk away," he added, and meant it so clearly she believed him for one unguarded second. She said yes the way people say yes after walking the long road themselves, not because the world had finally offered rescue, but because she'd built a door in her chest and decided he could knock. They set a date because dates make courage behave. They planned small things and large, lemon cake instead of vanilla, her mother's awkward toast, a garden where you could hear the highway if you listened for it. He asked for nothing flashy. He said yes to the parts of her childhood that still wanted ritual. He did not mention keys or clouds or cameras. His phone stayed face down. The notebook was ash. She'd watched it become that on her kitchen balcony, page by page, until the binding gave and the smoke smelled less like paper and more like relief. In the last week, she had a dream, the post office window, her red scarf, the man-shaped patient blur behind her, folding at the edges, stepping back until he was only weather. She woke with salt in her mouth and a quiet room. On the morning, she would wear white. Sienna pinned her veil and said, "If you want me to pull the fire alarm, say the word avocado." They laughed too loudly. Her mother cried like mothers cry when rooms make speeches at them. Mara checked her phone one last time and turned it to silent. "We're here," she told her reflection. "We choose." The church smelled like lilies and floor polish. The aisle looked longer than floor plans ever make them. Adrian stood at the front with his hands clasped like a man who'd promised himself a new kind of stillness. He looked smaller in a suit, less certain, more human. Halfway down, the bouquet in her hands thrummed. Once, then again, a buzz she hadn't planned for. Instinct made her look. Habit made her look away. She let the first vibration pass and told herself it was a calendar reminder or a weather alert or the ghost of a mistake. But the second came with a pulse she recognized, the shape of an interruption that knows your name. She dug a thumb into the flowers and saw it. A number with no name and no history. Clean as a hospital, empty as a mask. "You finally chose me." Her breath snagged. The aisle bent under her feet, a hallway in a bad dream. She lifted her eyes because the first rule was never let fear tilt your chin. Adrian's face waited at the far end, wet-eyed, genuinely afraid to look too happy until she got there. Another buzz. "Don't be scared." "I've been here all along." 1,000 explanations crowd a mind at once. Prank, wrong number, someone's sick idea of timing, a past she hadn't diffused, a present she had mistaken for safety. She could turn. She could drop the bouquet like a flare. She could speak avocado and let Sienna set the sprinklers loose on everyone they knew. Instead, she kept walking. Each step was a sentence. "I do not belong to messages." I do not belong to ghosts that stand in windows. I do not belong to the past that learned my pace. At the altar, she stood close enough to see the small tremor in his right hand. You okay? He whispered, not really a whisper because microphones are traitors. Yes, she said, because fear is an argument, and she had decided not to argue in public. The officiant started speaking, words about weaving, about weathering, about choosing daily. The audience breathed as one big animal. Her phone, buried in peonies, sat heavy and quiet, as if it too were listening. Vows, his first. He didn't promise forever because he'd been taught to stop promising what he couldn't control. He promised practice, to ask before fixing, to confess before hiding, to leave if leaving kept her whole. He said, I will not be your locksmith, I will be your neighbor. And somewhere in the room a laugh broke and mended at the same time. Her turn. She promised a thing that made her heart kick, to recognize fear in its costumes and name it out loud, to refuse the story where love begins as surveillance and ends as debt. She promised doors and the power to open them from her side. The rings were cool, the room was warm, the veil brushed her cheek like a polite secret. She found the part of her chest that still knew how to trust and placed the ring on his finger there. By the power vested, the officiant said, and the room leaned forward like a boat cresting a wave, and the phone inside the bouquet buzzed again, one last time, a single heartbeat of insistence that no one else could hear. She didn't look down. She looked at the man she was marrying, at the small tremor that had stopped now, at the shoulders he kept deliberately hunched because a piano teacher once taught him that the body lies first. You may kiss, he did, gentle, as if even kissing required consent, as if even joy could be too loud. Applause filled the lilies. Her mother dissolved. Sienna whispered avocado into laughter, then wiped her eyes. They turned to face everyone. The church doors opened on a light so bright it turned dust into glitter. Rice waited in fists. Bells wanted ringing. A life stood outside, saying choose again. Only then, as the organ rose, when no one was watching her hands, Mara slid the phone from the flowers and tilted it toward her body. She saw the preview line of the last message, truncated and awful, if he fails, I won't. She didn't open it. She slid the phone back into the bouquet like a thorn and thought, then you'll learn what fences are actually for. She took Adrian's arm. They walked, a measured pace into a world that had practiced watching her. Now, the watching would be done on her terms, or not at all. The reception blurred like a watercolor left in the rain. Dances, toasts, the small relief of seeing people you love eat. They escaped the crowd early and walked 2 blocks for air, her shoes in her hand, his jacket over her shoulders. Neither of them mentioned the buzzing phone. They mentioned the lemon cake, the uncle who cried, the way Sienna owned the dance floor like a benevolent tyrant. They mentioned everything that could prove the day had been real. The first weeks were ordinary in the way miracles sometimes are. They learned each other's mornings. He warmed her socks in the dryer before she woke on rainy days. She cut the tag from the bath mat because it bothered him that it tickled his ankle like a needy ghost. Every domestic decision was a negotiation conducted in low voices and open hands. He asked before fixing. She asked before assuming. They treated privacy like the rare spice it is. Use sparingly, savor the taste. A month in, he arrived home with a small box and the look of a boy who knows the dog might not want the treat. Upgrade, he said, holding out a new phone. Better battery, better camera. Transfer if you want. If you don't, I'll return it. Mara turned it over, light laddering along the edge. The gift wasn't the danger. It was the ease of saying yes. I'll think about it, she said, and set it on the table. That night, she migrated her number and nothing else. No cloud from his account, no family sharing. She watched the progress bar crawl and whispered to the screen, just the basics. He didn't comment on what didn't transfer. In month 3, he suggested a proper first aid kit. And when she said yes, he produced one like a magician making a dove appear. Gauze, tape, shears, a splint that folded smaller than a hand. I travel with this, he admitted. I used to keep a bag in my trunk. He caught himself. I'm trying to keep the bag in my head now. "Keep the shears in the closet," she said. "Keep the bag in the past." He nodded, practicing. The doorbell grew into its role as a character in their house. It learned the difference between a neighbor's elbow and a stranger's hesitation. They tuned the sensitivity together until the chimes matched reality more often than ghost. Some nights, she left the live view open on the counter like a window you can close without the world knowing it stayed open. Unknown didn't text, not for a while. Silence felt like a muscle that finally stopped clenching. They put mint in the windowsill. It liked the light. It forgave forgetfulness. He overwatered it once and apologized to the plant and to her. Old habits, he said, towel, wicking the leaves. "I used to think more of a good thing made it safer." "More isn't more," she said gently. "Sometimes it's just wet." They got used to each other's edges. He learned that she liked to fall asleep to rain sounds, but only when the playlist didn't include thunder recorded too close to the microphone. She learned that he woke from dreams with his hands open, as if he'd been promising something and forgotten what. On a Tuesday in month 5, he asked about a family cloud. "It's not surveillance," he said quickly, like a man translating in real time. "It's redundancy. We can save photos in 2 places. If you say no, it's no. No for now," she said. "Maybe later." "Later," he echoed and turned the conversation to something stupid on purpose. They laughed about a video of a raccoon eating grapes like a surgeon in scrubs. The laughter took. In month 6, she caught herself smiling into the mirror while brushing her teeth, not because of him specifically, but because the house had learned a way of being that didn't keep fear at the center. She drew a tiny dot, no words, at the glass's corner, a punctuation mark for a sentence she didn't need to write. They fought once over nothing, a towel, a dish, a tone. Because once you live in peace, even small storms sound louder. He went quiet in a way that used to scare her. Now it only made the room colder. "Speak," she said. "Don't retreat." "I'm holding back the wrong thing," he admitted. "I'm holding back the truth again." He exhaled hard. "I want to fix things before you notice they need fixing, because noticing first used to be the only way I felt worthy." He met her eyes. "I know that's broken. I'm trying." She sat across from him at the table where so many declarations had happened. "Here's the fix," she said. "If your hands itch, tell me. If your fear spikes, tell me. But the doing wait for me. Ask me." He wrote it down, not in a notebook about her, in a notebook about himself. He took to leaving his phone face up on the counter when he cooked, notifications visible, boring. She didn't read them. She let him have boredom. Boredom is proof of safety on their 9-month Saturday. A package arrived with both their names. She opened it and found a glossy booklet, Home Insurance Premium Savings, Smart Home Bundle, and beneath it, sensors with plastic tabs still in their batteries. She didn't have to ask how it had been ordered. The order number had his name's shape. She looked up. He was already shaking his head. "I messed up," he said. "I told an agent we were considering it. Considered turned into processed. I should have stopped at no. Return it," she said, and held his eyes long enough for the line between intention and action to show. He did. The agent sent a confirmation email. He forwarded it without comment. The house stayed analog except for the doorbell. They tried new rituals, spaghetti at the table on Sundays, Thursday walks past the post office where the window had once made a mirror out of danger. Each time they passed, the glass reflected both of them. Together, they didn't look haunted. They looked like a pair of people who had decided daily to remain human. The first crack came stupidly. During a thunderstorm that tightened the sky until it hurt, the power flickered and the router hiccuped. The doorbell went offline. His hands twitched. One step to the left, back, as if a metronome set too fast had replaced his heart. "I can reboot it," he offered. "In the morning," she said. "I won't sleep." "Then you won't sleep." He stood in the dim kitchen and pressed his palms flat to the counter, counting backwards until numbers lost meaning. He lasted until 2:10 a.m., when the urge rode up his spine and turned into motion. She was awake when he reached for the plug. She didn't say his name. She just cleared her throat. He stopped. "I'm failing," he whispered. "You're stopping," she corrected. "That's succeeding." He let go of the plug. He sat on the floor, back to the cabinet, and breathed with her until the need turned back into a thought. In the morning, he made pancakes with no apology. The doorbell came back on all by itself, smug with self-healing, a week later at 3:13 a.m., a time that had been dangerous before and had finally been demoted to ordinary. The phone on her nightstand vibrated once. Light like a small animal waking, she turned it over.